we're starting Chapter 5, which looks at rates and ratios. So you can write that down in your notebook, Chapter 5, rates and ratios, but you do not need to write down my example. So why would I need to know about rates and ratios? Well, let's say I want to get a cup of coffee, but I want to get the most coffee for the smallest amount of money. So what is the best deal for a cup of coffee? Do I get a tall? Do I get a grande or do I get a venti? Well, that's what we're going to learn about in this chapter. So by the end of this chapter, you should be able to tell me what's the best deal for a cup of coffee. So what is a ratio? So that's what section 5.1 is. You can write that in your notebook. So 5.1, ratios. So a ratio, and you're going to write this down, compares two quantities. You can write this, so they can be written, A colon B, A over B, or you can actually write it as A to B. So please write all that down. You can pause the video if you need to, and then resume when you're ready. You do not need to write down my example, but here's my example of, again, how I could use a ratio. Well, let's say you've decided to make chocolate chip cookies for the math club or the math class. The recipe calls for 3/4 of a cup of sugar, but that only makes 20 cookies, and we have 60 members, so we need to make 60 cookies, so I can write that as a ratio of 20 to 60. So if I wanted to figure out how much sugar I would need, I know I need 3 times the amount of sugar to get my 60 cookies, and I could calculate that. I could take my 3/4 of a cup of sugar, I can multiply that times 3. I get 9/4, which is an improper fraction, so I'm going to make that into a mixed number. 4 goes into 9 2 times, and I have 2 1/4 cups of sugar. Again, I don't need to write this example down because I'm just showing you how I can use a ratio and why they are important to know. I do need you to write this down. So I was curious. I wondered, what is the real difference between a ratio and a fraction? Well, a ratio is going to compare two quantities. So, for example, if I want to look at the ratio of pets, of cats to dogs, I can say there's 1 cat for every 4 dogs. So I can say the ratio is 1 to 4 for cats to dogs. I could also write this as a ratio. Remember, I can write it as 1 over 5. So that means if I look at people's pets, 1 out of 5 pets is a cat. So again, I'm looking at these ratios in different ways. I could also look at this as 1 out of 4 people, their favorite pet is a cat. So 1 out of 4 people, their favorite pet is a cat. Versus a fraction, which looks at the part of a whole. So can I really have 1/5 or 1/4 of a cat? No. So ratios comparing two quantities like cats to dogs, and fractions, it's kind of looking at one and it's looking at it as a whole. So write that down. If you have questions and don't understand, then write yourself a note on the side and bring that up tomorrow during lecture, and we can give more examples to help your understanding. Okay, you're going to write this down. You're going to write down example 1, and we're going to practice writing our ratios. So you're going to write down A, what is the ratio of red to green M&Ms? So let's count. How many red M&Ms do we have? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 M&Ms. I'm going to write that as a ratio. 5 to, how many green M&Ms? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13? We have 13 green M&Ms. All right, so that's one way to write a ratio. What is the ratio of yellow to blue M&Ms? So let's look at yellow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I can write a ratio this way as well. To blue M&Ms, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, and then what is the ratio of orange to the total number of M&Ms? So let's look at how many orange. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now, do I really need to count up all the M&Ms, or can I add up my red and my green and my yellow and my blue and my orange? I think I can. So let's add those up. I have 18 plus 6 is 24, plus 12 is 36 plus 12 to 48 total M&Ms. So I'm representing the three different ways I can write my ratios. Okay, so now you're going to practice some of those. Okay, write this down in your notebook. This is on your own, number 1. And you want to look at what is the ratio of pennies to the total change. So you really want to look at how many pennies do you have compared to how many coins are in that person's hand. And you're going to write that as a ratio. You should see the text box on the right, and you're going to insert your answers for 1A and B in that text box. The next one says, what is the ratio of quarters to dimes? So again, write this in your notebook and give me an answer in the text box on the computer. So you're writing this down in 2 different places. Make sure I see this in your notebook tomorrow during class. Once you're ready to move on, you can move on to the next screen. So here's another one. Write this down again in your notebook on your own. Number 2, favorite ice cream toppings are given. Okay, in this graph. Compare the number of students who like hot fudge, so here's hot fudge, to the total number of students, and you're right, it's a ratio. So these numbers, you can barely see that one, it's the number 1, it's a 1. So that's the number of students, so you don't have a lot of students here. So, but you're going to write a ratio of the students who like fudge to the total number of students. Don't forget to include those students that like fudge in your total number. So go ahead, write that in your notebook, and then insert your answer in the text box on the right. So we're going to have another example. Here's example 2, and you can represent ratios as a tape diagram. So I would like for you to copy this down. If you need to pause the video, go ahead and pause the video and resume when you're ready. So this is looking at the ratio of your monthly allowance to your friend's monthly allowance is 5 to 3, right? So this is, the 5 is you, and the 3 is your friend. The monthly allowances total $40. How much is each allowance? So you can write this. So here's you, here's your friend. Remember, you have 5, so you're going to draw 5 boxes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And your friend is 3, so you're going to draw 3 boxes for your friends. And you have 8 total parts. Okay, and those 8 total parts have to equal $40. So because there are 8 parts, you know that one part represents $40 divided by 8, so each part is $5. So if each of these is $5, how much money do you have? Well, you have 5 times 5, which is $25, and your friend only makes $15. So that's a way to represent ratios in a tape diagram. I'm going to do another example, so once you're ready to move on, go ahead and move on, and we're going to do one more example. Okay, so this one you're going to follow along as I go. So you're going to write down example 3 using a tape diagram. Again, you're writing down this in your notes. So you can abbreviate this. You don't need to copy it word for word. So you have 72 total M&Ms. You're going to put them into 2 groups. One for you and the other for your friend. You keep 3 for every 5 you're going to give to your friend. So again, we're going to make our tape diagram. So you and your friend. So you get 3 parts. So you're going to draw 3 boxes or 3 pieces of tape, and your friend gets 5. Again, how many total parts do we have? So we have 8 total parts. Okay, we know we have 72 total M&M. So we have 72 total. We want to break that into parts. So we're going to divide that by 8 parts. All right, so that tells me how much each part is worth. So if I take 72, I divide it by 8. I should get 9. So that means in each one of these boxes, I'm going to put 9 parts. All right, so how many M&Ms do you get? You get 27 M&Ms. How many M&Ms does your friend get? They get 9 times 5, which is 54 M&Ms. So you can represent your ratios with tape diagrams, and sometimes that's visually easier to see. Okay, I believe this is your last problem to do on your own. So you receive an allowance each month. You can spend $2 for every $3 you put into the bank. Last month you made $75. So how much did you put in the bank and how much could you spend? So you need to make a tape diagram in your notebook to show your answer and then insert your answer into the text box. So you want to look at your ratio of how much you spend to how much you have to put in the bank. So now you know how many parts you have, and then you need to figure out what each of those parts is worth if you have a total of $75. Again, if you don't understand what you're doing, write notes on the side, but try your best. So if I look in your notebook, I should see part of this written out. And again, you can actually use your textbook as a reference if you don't understand what you're doing, because your textbook also has examples. So if you want to look for some examples in your textbook on tape diagrams, you can look on page 193, and that will also show you how to do some more tape diagrams. When you're done, put your answer into the text box on the right, and then go to the last slide. Okay, this is just your last slide. This is just a summary to kind of remind you that a ratio compares two quantities, like cats and dogs, red M&Ms, green M&Ms, and a fraction is part of a whole. So that would be 1/4 of a cup of sugar. You could also look at your bag of M&Ms and you could eat 1/2 of your bag of M&Ms. So the difference between a ratio and a fraction. I will see you tomorrow. Please make sure all of your notes are ready to go and you can show me those during class.